Everybody at some point, I think, goes into a funk. You know that feeling. You're flat, you're off, you're just not quite yourself. And you can't even fully explain why. And the frustrating part is that you just don't know, why is this happening? In many ways, you could be thinking, hang on, everything is good. Why am I in a funk? Which makes it confusing. But also, you could have to flip of you thinking, oh, everything has gone to shit. Why do I feel this way? Or maybe that's the reason why. But in this episode, I think what I want to talk about, first of all, it happens to everybody. So it's not unique to you. And it happens way more than you think. That's what I suppose, discovered in my work over the last 25 years. And also, I think what should give everybody comfort is that the best of the best will fall into a funk at some point. Elite athletes, top business people, top leaders, top creatives. It's just way more common than you might think. And actually, one of the main reasons that some of my clients are my clients is because they come to me initially because they've fallen into a funk. Now, I don't know, I haven't even looked up what the definition of a funk is, but in my mind, it's just where you're feeling stuck, or you're not quite yourself. You're not in the flow. It's just, you're just a little bit off. And it's a human thing. I think we all go through periods where things can just feel off. Now, sometimes it is an external trigger, but sometimes it isn't. But usually the actual problem is not external. And the name of this podcast should give you a clue as to where we're going, the inner edge, the inner. So I think the real question is, okay, look, Shane, that's fine, I get it. But how do I get out of a funk when it happens? Now, let's step back a bit. I think in my experience, most people misunderstand what a funk actually is. I think they assume it's caused by something outside them. So they might go, well, okay, there's a setback, or there's circumstances in my professional life or my personal life that I don't like, that are difficult. There's pressure. Maybe they got a bad result. Maybe they felt they failed at something. Or maybe they feel that actually everything's gone calm. I know a lot of people who thrive in a crisis, but then when there's no crisis, they can fall into a funk. But here's the thing. Two people can face the exact same circumstances, be in the exact same situation, but only one of them might go into a funk. So what's the difference? To me, a funk is almost always the result of mental interference of some form. Something has come into your thinking that's disrupting your innate natural flow. It could be overthinking. It could be comparative thinking. It could be trying to force something to happen. But it's going to be something mental. I'll often think myself, if I'm thinking about myself in this area, or even a client will say, okay, what's the thought that's causing the problem here? And that might take a little bit of reflection to actually uncover the thought that's causing the interference, that's causing the feeling of being in a funk. Well, once that mental interference is there, your performance will drop. Because once the interference is there, it's going to affect how you feel, it's going to affect your state. And your state, if you've listened to me talk in any capacity on these podcasts, or if you know me, you'll know that I will say state is one of the key variables to your clarity and to your performance. And there's an art and a science to becoming a state champion. But if and when your performance drops, it's not that you've lost your ability. It's just because your thinking, usually at an unconscious level, your thinking has become tight, heavy, and distracted. Now, think about a time when you were performing well, when things felt natural, easy, almost, you were maybe in the zone. You probably reflect, if you think back to a memory, you'll realize you weren't really overthinking, you weren't comparing, you were just doing, you were just being. And then maybe somewhere along the way, something inevitably shifted. Maybe you became more aware of expectations. Maybe you were afraid of failure. Maybe you started comparing yourself to other people. Maybe you began trying to control something that maybe used to be more effortless or automatic. And all of a sudden, whatever you did, you're in your head. And this is the key phrase And that's the key moment. You move more into your head. You move into what I call fixed loop thinking. You're just kind of, without realizing it, I'm just going to go round and around on the same issue or the same point. And it all seems logical, but you're lost in that fixed analytical movement. So nothing in your world probably has changed, but everything has changed because your thinking did. So now your perception of your world has changed. To me, there's a great example of this in relation to the phenomenal athlete Usain Bolt. There was a point, I can't remember the exact year, but a younger Jamaican sprinter, Johan Blake, emerged as serious competition to Usain Bolt. But the first time they actually had somebody as a worthy competitor who was challenging for medals. And Johan Blake was incredibly strong off the blocks in the 100 meters. And that was never Usain Bolt's strength. And I can't remember which competition it was. It was a world championship or maybe an Olympic where Bolt did a false start. And after that particular competition, so I think he was disqualified, his coach said to him, look, what's going on? What are you thinking about when you're on the blocks? And Bolt said, look, what I'm thinking about is he's really strong off the blocks. He's faster than me. I think that's why he's winning. I need to get faster off the blocks. So I'm quite tense thinking about that. I'm focused on getting off the blocks faster. But the coach caught that thought. So that thought had brought Bolt into a funk without realizing it. It was making him tense. Tension is the enemy of you being at your best. Tension is the enemy of you being at your best. And what the coach said was, hang on, what are you doing? That's not your strength. Your strength is the last 50 to 60 meters where you just go into this incredible, I suppose, ultra strong finish and you pull away from everybody. And he said, don't be worried about getting off the block starter. That's his strength. But he's not as strong in you as the last 50, 60 meters. That's where you kill everybody. And that actually shifted Bolt out of the thought that was bringing him into a funk. He said, coach said, don't focus on that as your race. Your job is simple. Just get out of the blocks however you can and then dominate the last 50 to 60%. And that one shift in focus changed everything. Nothing changed physically, but the mental interference dropped. And so then Bolt's natural strength came back online. And again, I can't remember. I think the next race, was the Olympics, and he won the gold. And he did exactly what his coach said. He killed everybody in the last 50 to 60 meters. So even the best of the best will have moments, particularly where they can go into a funk. You could say the same about a soccer player, a player in the Premier League. It's a renowned thing that top strikers at some point will go into a funk. And if they react to that funk, they generally will get worse. If they can be okay with the funk, which is a weird thing to say, and just see it as something that occasionally happens, they'll come out of it quicker. Now, maybe to help, here's a metaphor in that area where you could say, okay, look, think of your natural performance like clear water, like in a clear lake. When you're at your best, you can see through that water to the bottom. And a funk is kind of where something disturbs maybe the sediment in the bottom of the lake, and all of a sudden it starts to get cloudy. You can't see as clearly. So, but the water isn't gone. It's just got cloudy with sediment. That sediment is thinking. And then most people go, well, hang on, where's the clarity gone? So they start to stir the water faster, or they maybe push harder. But that just makes the lake more dirty, more cloudy. And so in that kind of a way, you'll say, okay, well, hang on, clarity doesn't come from effort in that way. If I don't stir the sediment, if I don't go with those thoughts, everything will settle. You let the sediment settle. I've taken back up golf after a 30-year break over the last couple of years. And, you realize, okay, fair enough. Golf is mental, but it's also very physical. You need to practice. So Shane needs to practice more. But it is interesting to watch this in action with other people and myself. Like there's an old saying in golf that when you're in a slump in golf, the instinct is to grip the club tighter. But a tight grip in golf kills the swing. And the swing is everything. So the harder you try to force a shot in golf, actually the worse it gets. So in that game, the fix isn't more effort again. It's actually less tension. It's relaxing away from the mental interference that's causing the tension. is to loosen the grip. When you loosen the grip, not completely, but loosen it, the natural swing returns. And that swing is everything. So what about you? Just think about this. Let's take a few questions. First of all, where might this be showing up in your work or your life right now? Right? Where might it be showing up right now? And what are you maybe tolerating that a clearer, more relaxed version of you would never accept? Or one of my own favorite questions is, what's the one thought that's creating mental interference inside me? Not 10 things, just one. Now that might take a little bit of reflection. And you never know, you might even feel, as you're listening to this podcast, you mightn't even fully realize it, but you realize, hang on, I feel more relaxed. It's probably sometimes the deeper part of your mind recognizes the truth of what I'm saying. It goes, oh, hold on. It doesn't really matter almost what the thought is. If I'm feeling I'm in a funk, it means that there is a thought there somewhere. And maybe if I just relax myself and say, I'm not going to go with any negative thinking. I'm not going to go with comparative thinking. I'm just going to stop questioning myself, stop doubting, stop paying attention to whatever thinking is in my mind at the moment. Because consider this, if the interference lifted today, what would come back online for you? You know, sometimes it might just take a conversation with somebody you trust. Sometimes it might take listening to an audio like this. But once you see it, you will feel it. If you genuinely see it, you'll feel different. And that thinking then loses its power. You may not even get an answer to whatever question you've had, but the relaxed mind is like that water settling. And by the way, you know, I have to say this from my own experience is that, like I said earlier on about the sports person, if you can see going into a funk as something that just happens to the best of the best, and you can get okay with it being there and not reacting to the negative thinking that comes with it, it does help, weirdly, to pass quicker. So in that way, I suppose maybe the main point that I want you to kind of consider from this episode is the way out of a funk isn't more effort. It isn't more mental effort. It's really understanding clarity of mind. And that usually will mean relaxing the mental interference that actually is inside, not focusing on what's outside. I hope this helps. That's it for this week. Ciao for now.